There are objects that humanity remembers: the sword, the crown, the book, the wheel, the cross. Objects that have been carried through history and given names, symbols, meanings. We build monuments to them. We place them in museums. We write books about them. And then there are the objects that we simply use. Objects that surround us so completely that we rarely notice them. The spoon, the door, the light switch, the chair, and perhaps most quietly of all, the toilet. It is difficult to imagine a more ordinary object, and yet few objects have been present for more of humanity's private moments. It has witnessed illness. It has witnessed old age. It has witnessed embarrassment. It has witnessed relief. It has witnessed mornings when we did not want to get out of bed, and evenings when we were grateful that, for a few minutes, nobody could reach us. The toilet is not beautiful. It does not aspire to be beautiful. It is not displayed proudly in the living room. It is rarely the subject of conversation. And yet, in almost every modern home, there is a room dedicated to it. A small room, a private room, a room in which the human being closes a door, sits down, and becomes, for a moment, completely alone. Perhaps this is why the toilet deserves our attention. Not because it is extraordinary, but because it is ordinary. And sometimes the ordinary tells us more about ourselves than the extraordinary ever could. Long before porcelain, before plumbing, before the flush, there was simply the human body. And the human body has always had needs. Civilization did not eliminate these needs. It merely became increasingly sophisticated at hiding them. Thousands of years ago, human settlements were already developing ways to deal with waste. Archaeological evidence from ancient societies reveals drainage systems, latrines, pits, channels, and other methods of separating human waste from living spaces. The problem was already understood. If human beings live together, they produce waste together, and eventually someone has to decide where it goes. This may seem like a trivial problem. It is not. The history of civilization is, in part, the history of learning how to live beside other human beings without being overwhelmed by the consequences of doing so. We built walls, we built roads, we built aqueducts, we built sewers, and eventually, we built a small porcelain bowl. Few civilizations understood infrastructure quite like the Romans. Their cities required enormous quantities of water. Aqueducts carried it across great distances. Drains carried it away. Sewers passed beneath streets. And among these systems were public latrines. By the 4th century, Rome had numerous public toilets. They were not necessarily the quiet, solitary rooms we know today. Quite the opposite. The Roman latrine could be social. People sat beside one another. They spoke. They exchanged news. They conducted conversations while sitting on stone seats with openings beneath them. Imagine it. You enter a building, you sit down, someone sits beside you, and you begin talking about politics. Perhaps you discuss the emperor, perhaps the weather, perhaps the price of grain, perhaps nothing of consequence at all. And beneath you, the sewer continues its slow movement through the city. Water passes through channels. Waste is carried away. The city continues to function, and nobody thinks of it as philosophy, but perhaps it is. Because the Romans had discovered something that we still understand today. Civilization is not merely what happens above ground. It is also what happens underneath it. The city that appears clean on the surface requires an enormous invisible system beneath its feet. And the same is true of the human being. We present ourselves to the world. We dress, we speak, we work, we smile, and underneath all of it, there is the body doing what bodies have always done. Over the centuries, the relationship between human beings and their waste changed. The toilet gradually moved away from the center of social life. It became private And this change is more significant than it may first appear. We began to separate certain aspects of ourselves from the public world. We became increasingly uncomfortable with being seen in moments of physical vulnerability. Eating could be social. Bathing could be social. Working could be social. But elimination became private. We built doors, walls, locks. We created a tiny architectural boundary between the self and the world. And perhaps there is something deeply human about this. The bathroom is one of the few places in modern life where we are expected to be useless for a moment. Nobody needs us there. Nobody is asking us to answer an email. Nobody is asking us to perform. Nobody is asking us to produce. The world can wait. And so we sit. Eventually, humanity began to experiment with something remarkable. Water. Not merely for drinking, not merely for bathing, but for carrying away what we no longer wanted to see. The principle itself was ancient. Civilizations had used flowing water for sanitation thousands of years earlier, but the modern flushing toilet developed gradually through many inventions and improvements. In 1596, Sir John Harington described a flushing water closet. It was an ingenious device, a reservoir, a valve, water, gravity, and a rather simple idea. What if the waste did not have to remain here? What if we could simply make it disappear? Harrington's invention did not immediately transform society. The technology was expensive, plumbing infrastructure was limited, and the idea remained something of a curiosity. But the concept had been established. The toilet no longer had to merely contain, it could remove. And that distinction would change everything. There is something almost magical about the flush. You press a button or pull a lever, and something disappears. For a moment, the toilet becomes a machine of transformation. Water rushes forward, the bowl empties. The thing that was present is no longer present. We do not follow it. We do not watch where it goes. We simply trust the system. And this is perhaps one of the greatest acts of faith in modern life. We flush and forget. Beneath the floor, pipes carry the waste away. Those pipes connect to larger pipes. Those pipes connect to sewers. The sewers connect to treatment facilities. And somewhere beyond our walls, the problem continues to exist. It has merely ceased to be ours. This is one of civilization's oldest tricks. We take something unpleasant and move it somewhere else. In 1775, the Scottish inventor Alexander Cumming received a patent for a flushing toilet. Among his important innovations was the S-shaped trap beneath the bowl. It allowed water to remain in the pipe. That water formed a barrier. It helped prevent unpleasant smells and sewer gases from returning into the room. It was a small invention, almost invisible, and yet it transformed the experience. Because the modern toilet is not merely a hole through which things disappear. It is a carefully engineered boundary between the clean and the unclean, between the home and the sewer, between the human being and everything the human being would prefer not to think about. The water in the bowl is not merely water, it is a barrier, a small pool standing between two worlds. Above it, the bathroom. Below it, the darkness of the pipes. And perhaps this is why the toilet feels strangely complete. It contains, it separates, it removes, it protects. And then it waits. And then there is the man whose name has become permanently attached to the toilet, Thomas Crapper. Despite the legend, Crapper did not invent the flushing toilet. The toilet had existed for centuries before him. But Crapper was an important sanitary engineer and businessman who helped popularize and improve flushing toilets and bathroom fittings. He held patents for plumbing improvements and famously operated a showroom where people could see bathroom fixtures displayed as products. His name became immortalized for a reason that is less philosophical, but perhaps there is something fitting about it. History has remembered kings whose names have been carved into stone. It has remembered generals, scientists, explorers, artists, and it has remembered Thomas Crapper because of a toilet. Perhaps there is a lesson here. We do not always choose what history remembers about us. Eventually, the toilet became what we recognize today. Smooth, white, curved, cold, porcelain. It is an unusual object. It resembles almost nothing else in the home. A chair asks you to sit. A bed asks you to sleep. A table asks you to place things upon it. But the toilet asks something more complicated. It asks you to surrender your dignity for a few minutes, and then promises to give it back. You sit, you close the door, you lock it, and the world disappears. No audience, no expectations, no performance, only the sound of ventilation, perhaps water moving through the pipes, perhaps the distant noise of traffic, perhaps the sound of your own breathing. It is one of the rare places in modern existence where doing nothing is perfectly acceptable. And so people read there, they think there, they scroll through their phones, they stare at the wall, they remember conversations, they rehearse future ones, they worry, they plan, they daydream. Sometimes they simply sit. We often imagine solitude as something grand, a cabin in the mountains, a deserted beach, a monastery, a forest. But solitude does not always require distance. Sometimes it requires only a door. The bathroom may be one of the smallest private spaces available to a modern person, and yet it can become strangely intimate. A person may cry there, a person may sit there after an argument, a person may remain there for several minutes longer than necessary, simply because nobody is asking them to leave. The toilet becomes an accidental sanctuary, not because it was designed for contemplation, but because contemplation often appears wherever the world becomes quiet. The philosopher does not always sit beneath an olive tree. Sometimes he sits on porcelain. There is another peculiar quality to the toilet. It does not care who you are. The wealthy use it. The poor use it. The powerful use it. The powerless use it. Kings have used toilets. Presidents have used toilets. Scientists, generals, children, criminals, saints, sinners. Every human being who has ever lived has possessed a body with needs, and the toilet does not care about your achievements. It does not care about your education. It does not care about your social status. It does not care whether you have won or lost. Eventually, you sit. There is something almost democratic about that. Perhaps more democratic than most institutions we have built, because before the toilet, there is no resume, there is no title, there is no reputation, there is only the human body. Modern sanitation is one of those achievements that becomes most noticeable when it stops working. When everything functions, we forget it exists. We turn the handle, water disappears, we wash our hands, we leave, and we continue with our lives. But when the toilet refuses to flush, suddenly civilization becomes visible. A blocked pipe, a broken valve, a full septic tank, a sewer overflowing, and suddenly we remember there is a vast infrastructure beneath us. Every flush is part of a chain. Every household is connected. Every building is connected. Every city is connected. The modern city is, in some sense, a gigantic machine for moving water and everything carried by it. We live above it, walk above it, drive above it, sleep above it, and rarely think about the enormous hidden network beneath our feet. Perhaps this is the nature of civilization. Its greatest achievements are often the things we no longer notice. There is something strangely symbolic about the toilet. It is the place where we send things away, things that have served their purpose, things we no longer want, things we would rather not see again. We eat, the body takes what it needs, and eventually, the remainder leaves us. The toilet receives it without judgment. It does not ask where it came from. It does not ask why. It does not ask whether we are ashamed. It simply accepts. And then, it carries it away. Perhaps this is why the toilet can be understood as a small metaphor for life itself. Everything enters. Everything changes. Everything leaves. Nothing remains exactly as it was. We are often taught to look upward, toward the stars, toward mountains, toward great works of art, toward the accomplishments of remarkable people, and there is nothing wrong with that. But perhaps we sometimes forget to look downward, at the floor, at the pipes, at the chair, at the spoon, at the toilet. The ordinary world is filled with objects that we have stopped seeing, and perhaps this is because familiarity is one of the most powerful forms of invisibility. The more often we encounter something, the less we notice it. The toilet disappears into the background, the same way the walls disappear, the ceiling, the electricity, the plumbing, the roads, the clean water that comes from the tap, the warm room in winter, the light that appears when we touch a switch. Civilization surrounds us with miracles and then teaches us to call them ordinary. There is an old image of authority, the throne, a raised seat, a symbol of power. The king sits above everyone else. His position communicates his status. He is elevated. He is separated. He is important. And yet, there is another throne, one that almost every human being eventually occupies. It is smaller, it is usually white, it is located behind a locked door, and nobody applauds when you sit upon it. Still, for a few minutes, you are seated, you are still, you are alone. The kingdom is outside, the throne is inside, and for perhaps the only time that day, nobody needs anything from you. Listen, there is almost nothing happening. The bathroom is quiet. The pipes are quiet. The porcelain is cold. The door is closed. And for a moment, there is nowhere else to be. Perhaps this is why we should not be so quick to dismiss ordinary things. The toilet was never designed to give us wisdom. It was designed to solve a problem. But human beings have a strange tendency to find meaning in the things they build. We build houses and turn them into homes. We build tables and gather around them. We build beds and dream in them. We build doors and use them to separate one world from another. And we build toilets and accidentally create one of the last places where modern human beings can sit alone with themselves. One day, you will use a toilet for the last time. You will not know that it is the last time. You will sit down. You will stand up. You will wash your hands. You will leave the room, and the toilet will remain, waiting. Someone else will use it, then someone else, and someone else. The water will continue to flow. The pipes will continue to carry it away. The porcelain will remain quietly beneath the light. Perhaps that is the strangest thing about objects. They often outlive the people who use them. A chair remembers nothing. A door remembers nothing. A toilet remembers nothing. And yet, they accompany us through childhood, through adulthood, through sickness, through ordinary mornings, through sleepless nights, through days we remember and days we forget. So perhaps the toilet is not merely a toilet. Perhaps it is a reminder that civilization is built not only from magnificent things, but from thousands of small solutions to thousands of ordinary problems. That privacy is something we constructed. That cleanliness is something we engineered. That comfort is something generations of people worked to create. That beneath every beautiful city, there is infrastructure. Beneath every polished surface, there is machinery. And beneath every human identity, there is a body, a very ordinary body, a body that eats, a body that sleeps, a body that ages, a body that eventually returns to the earth. And somewhere along the way, that body will sit upon a porcelain bowl, perhaps while thinking about work, perhaps while thinking about love, perhaps while wondering what to have for dinner, perhaps while doing absolutely nothing at all. And then the water will flow, the bowl will empty, the room will become quiet again, and the person will stand, wash their hands, open the door, and return to the world. The toilet will remain behind, quietly waiting, as it has always done, as it will continue to do, a humble object, a private throne, a machine of sanitation, a monument to human ingenuity, and perhaps one of civilization's most overlooked achievements.